Hey, this is Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, and you're listening to the Total Kit Car on YouTube.
Hi, my name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and totalkitcar.com. Welcome along to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel and another episode in our History File series. I know I always say it, but I've got a good one this time for you. Very well thought of marque that lives on in a slightly revised form. I suppose we'd better get straight into it, because I want to keep this quite a long story and I need to keep these short, because I realise I do not want to bore anybody completely rigid. So no matter how much you like the subject matter. We're going to be talking about DAVRIAN today. Fabulous little marque. Around for about 16 years, actually, quite a long time. But they still, as I said, live on through the efforts of DARRIAN, a company called DARRIAN. But we'll come to that. Let's start off in 1967. The first company, as far as I'm aware, first kit car manufacturer to produce a kit car based on the Hillman Imp. I'm pretty certain that they had the accolade for that. There was always there's always been an aura around the manufacturer, but I still think, even though they are incredibly well regarded and the cars were brilliant, I still think it could have been even better. I feel there's been a load of nonsense I've written a lot of nonsense over the years. A load of tosh written about the origins of the DAVRIAN name, forgive me. But most TKC listeners and readers will probably know it's a kind of a hybrid of the Christian names of its co-founders. The Dav bit from a chap called David Clark, DAV, and the Rian from that of Adrian Evans. Simple as that, really. First, a bit of background. Adrian's family hailed from Wales, although by the early 60s he was living with his mum and a couple of lodgers, I believe, in a semi-detached house in Grove Park, South London. Tough part of South London, not far from Catford. By trade he was a chartered surveyor in the construction industry, but a massive motorsport fan. And I'm guessing, if you've heard a few of these voiceovers, you'll hear the name 750 Motor Club meetings, or the words 750 Motor Club meetings pop up in quite a few of these. And likewise, Adrian was a member of the South London group of the 750 Motor Club, and he'd go to the monthly meetings. And he even built, so inspired was he that he built an Austin 7 Special, like many other people of his age, in 1958. He knew a bloke who seriously, it's believed, was a test driver for Roots, who invited Adrian to a pre-launch viewing of a Hillman Imp prototype in the salubrious surroundings of a pub car park in North London in 1963. That one always impresses me, because you can imagine it, can't it? Yeah, do you want to come and see a new motor? In North London, of all places. But anyway, that's kind of what is believed to be true. And unsurprisingly, Evans was blown away by the Imp that he saw, or even the prototype form. Gave him definite ideas for the future. And put the Imp right up there alongside his other favourite cars, which I think were the Lola GT and the Porsche 904. He built a couple of imp powdered, goodness me, I've not even had a beer yet. I built a couple of Imp powered specials that he raced with a modicum of success, although he used the Imp's 875cc engine. He sighted it in the front rather than at the rear, a la Imp. He was an amazing guy. He built those cars in the front room of his mum's house, which is when he met the 18-year-old David Clark, who was a gifted laminator, who had been working, I think, for a boat builder on the south coast. Not sure which one, but he was working for a boat builder, creating boat hulls. So he obviously knew his way around a bit of GRP lamination. There's often bits of sort of confusion about exactly when the DAVRIAN marque started. Those the early imp-powered cars that Evans built weren't badged as DAVRIANs. However, he realised, I think, pretty quickly how talented David Clark was in the art form of lamination, fiberglass lamination. I think the duo, they first started using the DAVRIAN name on a very popular, as it turned out, for a little while, range of GRP fronts for classic Minis and Jaguar Mark IIs, among others, officially trading under the DAVRIAN glassed reinforced plastics name for a time. And they're doing that at Adrian's mum's house. The neighbours in the area must have hated them because, well, personally, and I think there must be something wrong with me, but I've been around the lovely heady scent of glass fibre for 40 odd years, and I love it. But lots of people don't, and also lots of people mistake it for a gas leak. I know a guy, a late friend of mine, who lived in a house on the south coast, separated from his wife. I think he had a house that he'd bought before they were married. When she kicked him out of the marital home, he returned to his bachelor cottage, shall we call it, to discover it was in kind of a bad state of disrepair. So, being involved with kit cars, he did what we all would have done and got a bucket of resin, chop strand mat, and basically toshed it all over the roof. Did a good job, he said. He said it stopped the leak. It's great, but next door neighbours reported a gas leak, and kind of. So there you go. I imagine the suburban area of Grove Park, they weren't too popular with the whiff of glass fibre. But replacement GRP panels, they were all the rage in the 60s, those early 60s. There was lots of people at it for various cars. Indeed, that's how DJ Sports Cars started, by producing GRP clip-on parts for various cars of the day, production cars of the day. Quality could be atrocious, I think, but with Clark in tow, Evans's stuff was absolute top-notch, I'm told. They decided to develop a little run of 3 road-orientated prototype vehicles. 2 of them are GRP monocoques, making the company early kit car adopters of the structure, along with Tom Killeen, Colin Chapman, of course, and Rochdale Motor Panels. I mean, I met the late Tom Killeen. I met him a couple of times, and he always carried in his briefcase a letter, a patent for the creation of monocoques, and that, he said, and the letter, he said, proved that he was the first to create an automotive, a monocoque structure for automotives. Read into that what you will. The other prototype of the 3 that Evans and Clark did was said to have been based on Adrian's own personal imp that he crashed, but I don't believe this is correct, though it said, I've seen it written that was it, but I don't think that is correct. And indeed, I think a friend of mine noted a post by David Clark quite recently, and I'm recording this in 2025, incidentally, that pointed out that the crashed imp actually belonged to a member of Evans's family. So that kind of proves that point, really. Anyway, with DARRIAN's GRP range proving popular and space needed to properly build the prototype cars that they were building, especially if, as they planned, they were going to offer them commercially, that was always the intention. They needed something bigger, a little bit more professional, and so they decided to find a proper factory, inverted commas, but air commas, but they wanted a factory, which is understandable. They found a suitable site in North Street in Clapham, which became really an amazing street in Clapham for race car companies and small manufacturers. Not only was DAVRIAN located there, Palliser, Nomad, Alexis, and Ray Race. Not the man's name, that was the name of the cars, the manufacturer. And also, I think DAVRIAN's little unit, they rented, I think it was number 65 North Street. They rented a corner of it to a chap called Albert Bett, who at the time was a well-known Jaguar Mark II tuner, specialist, repairer, restorer. So it really was an amazing street, automotive-wise. Seeing there was some huge potential in the company, Adrian gained a new business partner, a chap called Mark Newman, who ran a race preparation operation locally and was caught up in the excitement for the future of DAVRIAN, and he invested some much needed capital. So it was April 1967 that DAVRIAN Developments officially began trading as a bona fide car manufacturer. Although they'd already sold 15 kits from Adrian's mum's front room. They say that racing develops the breed, and it certainly did in Adrian Evans' case, although he didn't want to be seen just as a race car manufacturer, because well, not only did he want to put his cars on the road, there was actually a demand for road cars. And but soon after, when they'd moved into North Street, and for some reason that I don't know the answer to, David Clark departed and he returned to his first love of boat building. Maybe it was the attraction of yacht hulls, maybe. And also there's more confusion surrounding what name was given to the first true DAVRIAN models. Plenty described them as Mark I, when in fact they weren't Mark Is. That was a retrospective, albeit mistaken, sort of attributing that name to them. They were in fact known as DAVRIAN Imps, or also aka DAVRIAN Demons. The Imp base kit cost £275 at the time, which is £3,500, I think, approximately in today's money, according to the jolly old Bank of England index tracker, inflation tracker. And it featured the Imp engine mounted in the rear, as you'd expect. The Demon package was a sort of that had a mini engine, that one, classic mini engine, and that was available at £350, about 4,442, what I can tell. And I said that had a rear-mounted mini engine mounted transversely. However, there was always the main primary interest with DAVRIAN stuff was in the Hillman Imp engines. But because Evans believed, he was a firm believer in giving customers the choice and options, so he also offered, and I don't know why, but he offered the Renault Dauphine unit, or I should say the engine from the Renault Dauphine. I think a Beetle engine, VW Beetle engine, was also on the price list, but I'm told by a man who's given me great help with the DAVRIAN history. I'm not talking of gifted laminators, he's one. The man that runs DARRIAN cars, Tim Duffee, and he reckons that one was never actually ordered with a Beetle engine, unless of course you know different. Although they could never be described as sophisticated, DAVRIANs were, I could use a gentle swear word, effective, highly effective. What they lacked maybe in refinement, they made up for with innovation. For example, Adrian filled the sills of his cars and bulkheads with polyurethane foam, which he said gave rigidity. Plus, of course, the quality of their GRP was always regarded as first class. And talking to Tim Duffee, he actually worked for DAVRIAN back then for a time, and he was engaged in bonding the bodies together, completing customer builds and painting the body shells. We'll come to him again shortly. I've seen plenty of restored DAVRIANs over the years, and although the cars have required lots of under the skin TLC, understandably given the mechanicals and the age of them, cosmetically wise they've stood the test of time, and they've stood out for the remarkable condition of the GRP body. So they certainly did play a massive or give massive consideration to the quality of their bodies. Adrian, I think, was a straight down the line guy. Didn't didn't enjoy fripperies or any nonsense. But he always justified the lack of sort of perceived luxury in his cars by pushing the. If you looked at his adverts, a lot of them said the cheap DAVRIAN cars, the cheap way into rallying or circuit racing aspect. So, with that in mind, he didn't really feel the need for luxury items in his cars, although he never neglected the importance of road car sales. As I said, he really pushed those. They offered kit packages or rolling chassis, or more technically correct in their case, rolling monocoques. And they would go to the trouble of tailoring each kit to suit the customer's need. There was never one size fits all sort of thinking there. They would always find out what each customer wanted to use the cars for, and would tailor the packages appropriately. Pretty bespoke service for the day, if you think about it. And that's probably why, definitely why, no two DAVRIANs were ever really the same. I think they even went to the trouble of offering 3 thicknesses of body shells. Can you imagine that? Can you even believe that these days? There was the ultralight, intended for circuit racing, heavy weight for rallying, and road car, which was a hybrid of the two for road use. They certainly began in the sort of late 60s, attracting attention. Singer Cliff Richard featured a DAVRIAN imp on his popular BBC TV show in 1967, the year they arrived, they debuted. Hot Car magazine editor Tony Bostock, he's one of my heroes. He did a feature on DAVRIAN in his August 1967 issue. He raved about it. I think that guy loved it. And I think he always put a mention for DAVRIAN in Hot Car while he was editor, regularly. But Evans was very much, as you can probably gather, a champion of the Hillman imp, and the enthusiastic way he supplied his kits and the trouble he went to kind of emphasises that. In effect, in theory, if you had a garage big enough, you could park your Hillman imp donor. I've seen Tim told me this, next to your new DAVRIAN monocoque, and bolt bits from the imp and bolt them straight onto the DAVRIAN kit, which is kind of not always the case, but in DAVRIAN's case it certainly was. And while all this was going on, DAVRIAN still offered their GRP race parts and did commercial fiberglass work, which I think included stuff like shower cubicles. And let's not forget, they also built a silhouette Hillman imp, popular in racing obviously back in the day. Adrian also offered a DAVRIAN space frame chassis with a DAVRIAN with a Hillman imp body. Mod Sports, I'm guessing, was the intention for that. They did race prep as well, and general repair work too, to keep sort of bread on the butter. A lot of bread on the butter on the bread, so to speak. God, it's been a long day today. And talking to Mod Sports, a lot of the cars that they did sort of preparation and repair work on were Mod Sport cars. There was quite a list of DAVRIAN models. We'll probably give a little rundown on that, or maybe we won't. I'm not sure about that, because there's a lot of them, and it's probably easier to look at websites like Tim Duffee's, because he gives the full information on that, really. They gave their customers as well, talking of innovation, there were regular sort of appearances on their adverts. There was things like dual circuit disc brake conversions, which were very popular, very advanced for their day. Not many kit car companies would have been offering that sort of thing as upgrades in 1967-68. People often speculate why, and if you know about DAVRIAN, you know that they relocated from London. The story went that they needed to find new premises as the lease to 65 North Street in Clapham was expiring. With the need to move becoming more urgent, or ever more urgent, because the whole site was subject to a compulsory purchase order in March 1976, I think. Therefore, unsurprisingly, I suppose, given his family roots and not being able to find anything suitable locally, or certainly not he could afford anyway, a return to Wales seemed a very attractive proposition, especially as at the time the Welsh Development Agency were giving grants out to encourage businesses to move to South Wales. They had planned to build a new factory in an old creamery, but that fell through after the owner of the site unfortunately died. Therefore, it was back to home working for a while. Evans had bought a house, or was living in a house in a nice rural spot. Oh my God, here comes a Steve Hole butchering a name attempt. I think it's called Lampeter. Lampeter. If I've murdered that, then again, as I always say, forgive me. Before long, Adrian came across some local enthusiasts in the area who were eager to get involved. And I'm going to, oh my goodness me, this is going to get really tricky and messy. Production moved to, I don't know why I do this to myself, Glen Taify, Glenteifi garage. That's easy. And here we go. This one's going to test me completely, and you're going to laugh if you are a dab hand at the lovely Welsh language. Pontry Hyde Fendigide. I'm not even going to spell that. It's a long word. Starts with P-O-N-T. There you go. Where he teamed up, and this is easy, with the brothers who were called John and Peter Dark. It was this association that really got Adrian into rallying, where John Dark and another guy called John Bray really did a lot to establish DAVRIAN as a force to be reckoned with on the stages. The company were up to, but they were making Mark 6s by the time they moved to Wales. But when they got to Wales, the Mark 7 was coming along. But I guess it's been described as an inspired moment of genius. Evans chopped 4 inches out of a Mark 7 chassis monocoque and stuck a silhouette. In fact, this is where the silhouette imp came from. It was it was mid-70s. That's what the imp body was. There we go. I got a bit ahead of myself there, so forgive me. And it was used in the modified saloon silhouette class in the production sports. That's mod sports. Equally bonkers brother, prod sports. At this stage, Evans' sister Vicky, she joined as PR manager, and by all accounts, she did a really great job. Came up with some fantastic. I've seen some of the adverts that she, obviously I didn't know at the time she was responsible for, but turns out that she was. Although I'm not sure if the iffy DAVRIAN motto of DAVRIAN, keep it stiff, was coined by Adrian when he was responsible, or possibly Philby, because Peter Philby worked for DAVRIAN in North Street for a time. I think he did a bit of marketing as well. So there you go. Vicky incidentally had previously worked for Hot Car and Motoring News magazine, so she was a dab hand at understanding the market and marketing the stuff. All was going well when a purpose-built factory set up by the Welsh Development Agency opened in 1979, and also joining the company again, but full-time at this stage, was that man Tim Duffee again. He moved down to Wales as factory manager for DAVRIAN. While another chap, if you've been around the kit car industry for quite a while, you'll be aware of a company of a car called the Reflex, by a very talented designer called Gareth Atkinson, and he later produced the Reflex, and he came on board as development engineer. I think at that time Gareth was very much into vintage motorcycles, but fancied turning to 4 wheels, and he had his pencil set out in the design of the Mark 8, aka Dragon. Business was definitely buoyant. It was doing really well, although as ever cash flow was often a problem. But the Mark 8 was intended as a full-on production car, and it had massive potential. I guess it could be said that in hindsight it may have been a little bit overambitious, and they went back to the Welsh Development Agency again, who came up with a larger 7,500 square foot unit in 1982. Again, I think that was in Lampeter, and gave them a nice grant to help develop the Mark 8. Sadly, though, the bubble totally burst in February 1983 when DAVRIAN Developments went into liquidation, which is a great shame, because Adrian sounded like a great guy and a talented man and a driven man who believed so firmly in the products that he was producing, and quite rightly so, it seems. Rights to the models then were picked up by a guy from Northern Ireland, Will Corrie, a keen and very skilled rally crosser, who got Professor Tony Stevens, no less, to design what became the Corrie Cultra, which was a development of a DAVRIAN Mark 8 maybe. Unfortunately, Corrie too went bust. But at that time, Tim, who'd been trading when DAVRIAN went into liquidation, he'd been trading from a corner of the factory under his own DARRIAN cars, or also known as Team Duffee Engineering. But he serviced customers' requests for parts and GRP panels, remembering that he's a fantastic laminator. And he bought the rights, and he still trades to this day as DARRIAN cars, which is fantastic. Tim and his son Rodri have produced various models under the DARRIAN name for, crikey, 40 odd years now. Initially with the T9, then the T90. I think Tim was one of the first to use the Millington 2.5 litre diamond engine, is it? And that T90 has evolved over the years into, I think, what is his current model, the T90 GTR Plus. He also did, again, because he's a dab hand at glass fibre, a beautiful replica of the Alpine A110 that he called the MC220 Berlinette. It was originally a special commission for a customer. That's another service they offer, by the way, that Tim is happy to take on commercial specials for customers, I believe. But they offered it commercially, and they sold a few of those Alpines along the way, or Alpine replicas. Though he's relatively tucked away in glorious mid-Wales, and like it that way, their cars are criminally underrated. But if you go to a Clubman's Rally or whatever, and you see a DARRIAN, you might even see a few DAVRIANs on historic stages, by the way. But these days you'll see DARRIANs, and you'll see them, I imagine, very, very close to the front. They are fearsome cars. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think they are feared in rallying circles, to be honest with you, for the quality of, they've got a good driver in a DARRIAN. He's going to be somewhere or thereabouts, really. They produce various GRP panels for a couple of other kit car manufacturers as well, I believe. And even to this day, I'm still trying to persuade Tim to let me go and see him and do a feature, but he prefers to be tucked away in Wales doing what he does, which is what he does best, really. Anyway, meanwhile, we got a sad end to this story. Post-DARRIAN, a very disheartened Adrian Evans, who could be excused, I think, for feeling downhearted after putting his life and soul into his company for, 16 years. And if the Mark 8 and the fully built Dragon had even reached half of their potential, he would have really hit it big, and he deserved to. He really deserved to. If ever a guy really put everything he had into his little company, then he really is a deserving case. I believe he began making replicas of Victorian lampposts in GRP, and I'm told he sold hundreds of them. And he also concentrated on building 2- or 4-wheeled horse-drawn carriages, which were said, and typically they would be, said to be lovely things. Unfortunately, in July 1992, he passed away, tragically, and he was just 46 years old. I've heard it said, and Tim's told me a couple of stories about Adrian, which all good, by the way, but He said that he was shy and he was a bit of an introvert, plus that he could be difficult to work with, but he was focused and he was fixed on what he wanted to achieve. And no one can take away the fact that his legacy remains the Little DAVRIAN Developments Company, which, as I said when I came in, there's a reason why that there's a very, very enthusiastic new DAVRIAN register run by a guy called John Rawlins, who knows everything there is to know about the marque, and passionately guards the legacy, I suppose. And there's plenty of enthusiastic owners and nice people, the DAVRIAN lot. And once again, they're very, very, very protective about their cars and their marques. So I'm hoping the information I put here is nearly all right, because I think John read something that I wrote once and he never told me off. So it must have been nearly right. And even indeed, Tim, who knows everything there is to know about DAVRIANs, he signed off a feature that I wrote a while back. And of course, I've got to do a little bit of gentle promotion. I should do more of it really, but I don't. A couple of years back, we did the Imp Provers poster, which we, to the best of our knowledge, put every single Imp-based kit car that we know of since 1967, and all the various Imp marques, Imp models, and variants on a poster. We actually found some a few months ago. We thought we'd sold out. We found some, and we've still got some available. So if Neil's going to put a photo up, and we'll put a link to that poster, and if you'd like one, in fact, I think at the moment we're selling them on eBay of all places, for something like £12.50. We'll put a link up. But if you want one of those posters, we have got a few, but hurry up. is the motto and the wording there. Anyway, let's just quickly talk about DAVRIAN being motorsport giant killers. They are actually, even though you may not be aware of it, they're one of the most successful marques in UK's motorsport history. Their cars have won umpteen championships. The drivers are among the most winningest ever, with names like John Pugsley, Stephen Roberts, these days, for many years, been running Merlin Motorsport down at Castle Combe. Bob Jarvis, a man that has always been associated with Knockhill Race Circuit, a lovely chap called Ian Forrest, and Pat the Rat Longhurst, being among the most well known. Indeed, Longhurst had more victories than anyone else, and he was known as Mr. DAVRIAN for good reason. He could certainly drive a DAVRIAN very nicely. It tied in well with his day job as a motor trader in South London. I think he was in a partnership with a guy called Bob Jarvis. Initially successful in the Mark V, he switched to a Mark VII in 1976, and he continued to rack up wins. 6 victories in 1976 took him to 4th overall in the Bonkers Modsport Series, and he repeated that in 77 and 78. Came 2nd overall in 1979, losing out to that man Roberts. He had a mid-engine DAVRIAN Mark 8, but he just beat, I think Longhurst just beat John Pugsley in Bob Jarvis's old DAVRIAN. In 1980, Longhurst's main rival was none other than Steve Soper, British touring car great, or future British touring car great. He was in a Radbourne Racing prepared Fiat X19. Pat won all but one race, I think. He took the Modsports Championship by just a single point. That was 1981, I think. I think Longhurst then gave up racing for a few years, put all his energies into fishing, I'm told, but was lured back in 87 for another crack at Modsports. I think he then rented a lady called Julie Thwaites could pedal a DAVRIAN, and I think Pat rented her old Mark 8. He was very competitive, but I think the car was basically in road trim. Not as competitive as he was, unfortunately. 1988, Pat had a change and he switched to the 750 Motor Club's Kitcar Championship. Again in Thwaites' ex-Thwaites car, Mark 8, and he won the championship. And I think he carried on, I'm pretty certain, for about 5 years in the Kitcar series until maybe 92, 93. when the youngies crash them out for the last time. But that kind of denotes the fact that although, you know, we talk about Caterham, we talk about the well-known manufacturers that have done well in racing, motor racing, it just shows you companies like Silver Auto Kits, very successful in motorsport, and DAVRIAN, one of the most successful. And it just shows that the underdog industry of the kit car industry is a very capable one. But anyway, that's it for the this episode. I think I've gone over by about 5 minutes over my preferred 30 minutes. I do apologise this one's gone on a bit long, but I'll let you get on with your day. I thank you profusely for coming along to visit our channel and giving up some of your valuable time. If you could hit the subscribe button on the way out, I'd be really appreciate that. And I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day. Steve Hull over and out, and I'll see you on down the road.